speaking to us about the outcome of this election and the possibilities that stand now that the opposition has, of course, disputed the outcome of these results. And in studio for this conversation, communication strategist Mark Bichachi. Thank you so much for joining us on Kivumbi. We also have advocate and political analyst Alex Gatundu. And last but not least, political risk analyst Dismas Mokua. Gentlemen, many thanks for joining us on Kivumbi 2017. Before I get your thoughts on the situation in Kibera and various other NASA strongholds, let's first begin with your thoughts on the events that led to the declaration of Uhuru Kenyatta as the winner of this election. There was a long wait for Kenyans. IBC, of course, promising they will be having an address after the other. Dismas, your thoughts on the events of last night?
Well, I wouldn't say that it was a long wait because there is a constitutional provision to have it undertaken within 7 days. But what made people a bit anxious and nervous was the integrity of the entire process, where you have the NASA participants in this process saying that the process was not free, fair, nor credible, and well, Jubilee saying that everything was free, fair, and credible. So there was an absence of there was nobody who came out to manage those expectations and frustrations. Because when you're having an election, it's supposed to be everybody, all the participants are supposed to accept that it's free, fair, and credible, so that at the end of the election, if somebody is declared a winner, there's no doubt on anybody's mind that somebody has won. And if somebody has lost, there's no doubt. But that seems to be lacking. Because when you speak to NASA and you saw what Honorable Musalia Mudavadi indicated and James Orengo, they said that there had some concerns that they wanted addressed by IBC. But by the time they go to Bomas of Kenya, according to them, IBC had already taken a decision that there was going to be a declaration. And you know, they cited there was increased security for the president, there was the red settlement for the president. So as far as they're concerned, a decision had already been taken which did not address their concern. And all over the world, if you want to have an election that if somebody is declared a winner, everybody appreciates this a winner. If you're a loser, everybody appreciates. All the major parties have to be agreeable. And in my view, if say for some reason IBC or Jubilee think that NASA is raising frivolous issues which are supposed to be treated with their level of contempt, they must address those issues. Like, for instance, my understanding of what James Orengo was complaining is, number one, there was no results declaration at the constituency level. That he expected to have 290 commissioners declaring results and sending the numbers as well as the images to Nairobi. So it says there's a bit of an issue. And my view, if I had the opportunity to advise anybody at IBC, I would rather delay the announcement even by 7 days. Keep everybody posted keep everybody posted about what is going on, but ensure that you have accuracy. Because right now, the people who have gone to the streets are claiming, wait a minute, our votes were stolen. And there's another group saying they do not understand why people are going to the streets. So there was a bit of clarity missing in my view.
And you remember, Ezra Chiloba did say the same thing during those periodic updates. I mean, he said, ours is not to rush to declare the winner. Ours is to ensure that the winner is declared in a manner that is free, fair, and credible. That was yesterday, just hours before the announcement. And then, of course, hours later, they came out and announced that. Alex, do you think then we should give IBC the benefit of doubt? I mean, they, according to NASA, told the opposition that they will deal with their grievances after the declaration or the announcement that Uhuru Kenyatta was president was made. Was that in order?
I think for us to come up with a judgment as to how we can rate the performance of IBC, we must first remove from that judgment or the making of that judgment all the interested parties. So we remove Jubilee, you remove NASA, and then we come to the other parties who had no interest in the elections in Kenya as far as participation and results were concerned. We are talking about observers. We had two sets of observers. We had local observers, and we had international observers. Out of 100%, we have 100%, of course, approval of the way the elections were conducted.
Right.
Free, fair, and credible. Those are the three words that were used across the board by all the observers, both local and international. I happen to be in one of the bodies that was participating, that is the Law Society of Kenya, and I was also an observer. So for me, so long as there was 100% approval as to the conduct of the elections by in both international and the local, I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. So I would give them, out of 100, I would give them 90. There's an issue that he has raised, that NASA raised several issues. Of course, first, there is this issue as to what is the role of IEBC at the National Tallying Center. We must understand that it is not their responsibility to change any figures. If there is any dispute as to figures, if at all there was, that was supposed to have been done both at the polling station and at the level of the constituency. And the moment Form 34A is generated and transmitted to both constituency offices and the National Tallying Office or Center of IEBC, then those results are final. There is another form that is generated at the constituency level, that is that 4B. It is also final. That particular form, once it is generated and transmitted to IEBC, it is also final. So any validation, if you want to know, were these figures correct, that verification is only done at the constituency level. In fact, the IEBC, National Tallying Center, has no mandate from the pronouncements of court to verify. They have no mandate to verify.
Right.
The issues that they were raising, of course, bordered on verification. So they were coming in very late. They did not invest. They did not invest in officers or agents at the constituency levels. That is the 290 constituencies. That is where they ought to have done that. But both parties, that is NASA and Jubilee, seem to have invested heavily in the National Tallying Center, whose role is only clerical.
All right. And we'll get to those grievances with the opposition later. But, Mark, let's talk about President Uhuru Kenyatta's acceptance speech. At the end of the day, he was declared winner. He did give his speech. And among the key issues in his speech was him saying that national unity will be his maiden duty now that he's been re-elected. I mean, he extended an olive branch to Raila Odinga and his supporters, saying, you know, give a handshake to your neighbor. The election is over. Let's move on from this. Your thoughts on that speech by the president?
Thank you for the question, but allow me to just address Dismas for 30 seconds. What constitutes a legal declaration in this country is when the returning officer signs a document that declares these are the results of either the polling station or the constituency tallying center, and that's it. And that's why we saw Chebukati having to sign. That is what constitutes a declaration. Speaking in public is ceremonial. That document, if it's not signed, is not considered a declaration. So I'd like to correct him on that, because one of the things that we keep doing is we keep creating non-issues to be issues in this election to give power to something that should not have any power at all. That's the truth. Now, back to the president's speech. One of the things that the president did, and this is very critical, is this is the first time a sitting president has actually gone to Bomas and submitted himself to the prominence and the importance of the IEBC to accept his certificate in person. That is very important. His first communication was, I trust the IEBC, I've trusted my fate to the IEBC, and I'm putting myself out there for the IEBC to give me the certificate. That was his first communication. Second communication, of course, was a reconciliatory tone to the nation, which I think all of us should take very seriously, because whether you voted him or not, he is the president of this republic. Just the same way in 2022, when there are other people running, there will be only one person who's considered the president of the republic. That being said, what needs to be very clear to most Kenyans right now is we need to take that message seriously, and we need to consider that what we are doing now, is it nation building or nation destruction? If it is nation building, let us continue to do that. And if indeed you voted for the opposition and you feel like your views were not captured in that election, you still have a role to play. What is that role? To keep your government, both at county level and at national level, accountable to you and to the nation to meet the standard which you expect. That's where we need to be.
All right. Dismas, your thoughts on President Uhuru Kenyatta's acceptance speech, because that led to an eruption of celebrations in Jubilee strongholds, and we have pictures on the screen there of the celebrations across the country, and they're still continuing up to now. Your thoughts on how the president handled the situation?
Well, in my view, when I looked at the president and when he delivered the speech, you saw a bit of honesty from a president who realizes that the nation is divided in the middle. His speech was structured in a manner as to manage expectations, because obviously supporters couldn't wait for the speech for them to break into a dance and song. But the most important thing he did, in my view, is when he recognized that Raila Odinga was a very good competition for the presidential race, and he extended an olive branch and he said that we want to work together, we want us to work as a partnership, in as much as he's in the opposition and is wounded, but the invitation he gave him that they work together to build the nation. Because the critical aspect, and the president spoke about it, it's not about winners and losers, because that's expected. When you go to an election, somebody must win and somebody must lose, and that is even more exciting if somebody wins or loses in a process which is free, fair and credible. So that's something that maybe needs to be addressed at a separate forum, whether the election was free, fair and credible. And I mean, like, for instance, what Mark is speaking about the constituency declaration by the constituency returning officer, the best practice is you read it aloud for everybody to see, so as to minimize room for any propaganda, so that nobody smells a rat. But maybe that's a bygone which lawyers like Alex are going to sort at the Supreme Court. But in my view, the biggest challenge President Kenyatta is going to face, and he's been accused of that for the last 5 years, is national inclusivity. And when he spoke about unity, because as we speak right now, he's the president. If somebody, Orenga has indicated that NASA may not go to the Supreme Court,
right.
So we have President Kenyatta for the next 5 years. His biggest challenge is going to be national inclusivity.
Right.
That every Kenyan feels they are part and parcel of this administration. Because as is it right now, if you are not a member of the Kikuyu nation and the Kalenjin nation, you do not feel that you are part and parcel of this government. And the president now, his biggest challenge is to live to his word, to his promise. And he repeated it, I counted, he repeated it 4 times, that he's going to strive for unity. And that's what people expect from him. Because, elections, we are not going to spend a lot of time crying about the elections, who has won, who has lost. Life has to go on. I mean, there's an interesting thing in America. They say, it doesn't matter who wins or who loses. The following day, you must go and do your shopping. So it's going to be business as usual.
Right.
But he must manage the number one, expectations and frustrations of the entire nation, so that people do not have a pent-up frustration that now they have to go to the streets and start throwing stones for them to express that.
All right. And Alex, of course, that being said, the division that is coming out, President Kenyatta saying national unity will be his maiden call. What would you say this win means for Uhuru and Ruto?
I think for them, first, it was a lap of approval from the entire nation. If you look at the figures that came in, across the board, from presidential all the way to even the local levels, he was able to get the majority. So that is the first. That is what it means to both of them. So secondly, that confidence, to give them confidence to ensure that all over the country they are able to continue with the project that they had done, and also take care of the grievances that have arisen, not only after the elections, but also even before elections. The issue that he's talking about, inclusivity, I don't think it is their problem. It has never been their problem. That is a problem of perception and leadership from those areas where the leadership keep harping this issue of this, we are being marginalized. But when it comes to the hardware bit, that is the infrastructure and the structures, those are systems, they have been put in place. This government is not putting up structures and infrastructure in only areas that are Jubilee. No, they are doing it. You fight in Kakamega, you fight in Bungoma, you fight in Kisumu, everywhere. So the problem in Kenya is not the one of hardware. Hardware is okay. It is software. Our perception, our mindset, we need to change that. And let us not view Uhuru as the other, or Uhuru as ours. No, Uhuru is the president of the Republic of Kenya. That is something that we must all understand.
Right.
The moment that he will be sworn in, depending on whether there will be petition. If there will be a petition, then we'll have to wait. If there won't be a petition, then we don't have to wait for long. But the fact of the matter is, it is important for all of us to understand that this Uhuru is not owned by anyone or any segment or a corner of Kenya. Uhuru is the president of the Republic of Kenya. He's the head of state. He is not the head of Jubilee zones or Jubilee whatever you want to call
All
it.
right, and of course, Mark, following this, declaration and looking at the votes and how he garnered those votes, the feeling from Jubilee members is that he is a national president, because with the votes that we're going with, according to IEBC, which are disputed, it shows that he's garnered votes, from a majority of the country. But how do you think the Jubilee team is likely to handle this division that we're seeing? And I mean, on the screen now, we're seeing pictures continuing of the protests in Kibera. How are they likely to handle this?
First and foremost, I'd like to demystify one thing. The scenes that we are seeing there are not NASA strongholds, they're ODM strongholds, because much of Ukambani is calm, much of Western Kenya is calm. So let's just specify the problem. It's ODM, that's one. Second part is we need to understand that if Uhuru Kenyatta garnered 40% in Kisiland, garnered as many votes as he did in Luyaland, then in that perspective, this is the most nationalistic vote we've ever seen, which is not just a credence to the Jubilee campaign machinery, but for me, it's more a credence to the Kenyan people who went there and chose to vote not according to their tribal leaning, but based on what they believed was a policy they believed in. And Jubilee campaigned on a very interesting policy. They campaigned on projects that they had done and projects that they were planning to do. Now, the Kenyan people seem to have bought it. Now, where is the challenge? The challenge actually is Uhuru Kenyatta going to be able to reach over into the ODM side? Because the truth of the matter, he did reach over into the Wiper side. He got 20% of the vote in some places. He did reach over into the coastal region, and he got 2 counties out
Mark,
of it.
I had to stop you just for a moment, and let's link up with Duncan Haemba. He is joining us live from Kibera. Haemba, we continue to see live pictures there of the situation in Kibera. Quite a bit of security detail. Earlier on, you had quite a large number of protesters behind you. Seemingly rather peaceful protests, however. Bring us up to speed with the situation so far.
This is Karanja Road, and you can see the police officers on the other end are trying to, actually they are throwing tear gas canisters to where the media is. We are being told not to follow them, and in the morning when we arrived here, we also met hostility from the youth who are accusing the media that they've gone silent, whereas they've been actually undergoing torture entire night. So that is the situation.